In 1707, Scotland stopped being a country. No army marched in, no king was killed in his bed. It was bought. Bought with English gold. To pay off a debt the Scots had run up, chasing one wild dream in a swamp on the wrong side of the world. This is the story of how a free kingdom took its silver, almost all of it, and bet it on a strip of jungle. And how, when the bet went bad, it had nothing left to pay with but its own freedom. We don't remember the kings here. We follow the money. And this time, the money leads straight into the dark. Wind the clock back 10 years to the 1690s. Scotland was poor, cold, shut in. South of the border, England had its empire. Sugar, spice, whole oceans of trade locked up tight, and Scottish ships barred from nearly all of it. The Scots could see the wealth of the New World sailing past. They just weren't allowed to touch it. Then one man stood up with an answer. His name was William Paterson. And he was no dreamer pulled in off the street. A few years before, this same Scot had helped build the Bank of England itself, the beating heart of English money. The man who helped fund England now meant to make Scotland rich. His idea was simple. It was also, on paper, brilliant. Look at a map of the whole Earth. Find the thinnest neck of land between the two great oceans. There it is, Darien, on the coast of what we now call Panama. A few miles of ground, with the Atlantic on one side and the Pacific on the other. Hold that ground, Paterson said, and you hold the gate of the world. Every ship, every bale of silk, every chest of silver moving between Europe and the East would have to pass through you and pay you for the right. It was the same dream that would, 200 years on, carve the Panama Canal. Paterson saw it first, and he was sure it would crown Scotland the richest little kingdom on earth. So Scotland built a company to chase the dream. The Company of Scotland, set up by an act of its own parliament in 1695. And then the whole country went mad for it. This is the part you have to feel to understand it. Money came from everywhere, not just lords and ladies. Town councils emptied their chests. Merchants threw in their savings. Ministers, shopkeepers, widows, soldiers, rich and poor side by side, all reaching for the same dream. Ordinary people put down money they could not afford to lose because they had been told there would be no losing. By the end, the company had pulled in close to £400,000. By some counts, that was as much as a quarter of all the spare money in the entire kingdom. Read that again. A whole nation took a quarter of everything it had and laid it on one bet. No empire was forced to do this. No king made them. They did it to themselves, with open eyes and hopeful hearts. Now, the plan had never been to stand alone. The big money was meant to come from London, too, and from Amsterdam and Hamburg. Half the world was going to share the risk. But here the knife comes out. King William, king of both Scotland and England, did not want this scheme to live. And England's own East India Company did not want a rival on its trade routes. So they leaned on Parliament. They leaned on the foreign backers. They made it known that money put into this Scottish venture would not be money well spent. One by one, the outside backers walked away. London pulled out. The Dutch pulled out. The Germans pulled out. And Scotland was left holding the whole bet. Alone. In July of 1698, 5 ships slipped out from the Scottish coast. On board, 1,200 souls, and the hopes of a whole country sailing with them. They named the land they were going to New Caledonia, New Scotland. They would raise a city in the jungle, throw open a great trading port, and grow fat on the wealth of the world. They had no idea what was waiting for them. The trade goods tell you the whole story. Into the steaming heat of the tropics, the Scots had packed thick woolen cloth, wigs, combs, fine mirrors, things no one in that jungle had the smallest use for, and no one would buy. They had crossed an ocean to open a shop and filled the hold with all the wrong stock. Then the land itself turned on them. The rains came and would not stop. The food rotted in the wet, and the fever crept in, malaria, the bloody flux, and it stayed. Men died by the dozen, then by the score. Soon they were bearing more than they could spare hands to bury, and no help came. None. King William had given the order plainly. No English colony, not Jamaica, not one of them, was to send these Scots so much as a barrel of bread. Their own king had chosen to let them starve, rather than risk a quarrel with Spain. After barely 8 months, the ones still alive gave up. They dragged themselves back onto the ships and ran for home. Many never reached it. They died on the open sea, on the way back to the country that had bet everything on them. And here comes the cruelest turn of all. A second fleet, 1,000 more people, had already set out to bring them aid, never knowing the first colony was already dead. They sailed all that way and reached the jungle to find it empty. Graves, wreckage, silence. They tried to hold the ground anyway. Then the Spanish came and laid siege, and in the spring of 1700, the last of New Caledonia laid down its guns. Of the roughly 2,500 who had sailed for Darien, some 2,000 never came home. Now, follow the money home. The dream was dead, but the debt was not. That quarter of the kingdom's wealth, gone, sunk in a swamp and buried in the sea. The lords were ruined, the merchants were broken. Towns that had poured in their last savings had nothing left to show for it. Scotland had wagered its shirt and lost it. And a broke nation is a weak nation. South of the border, England saw its chance. For years, it had wanted one thing above all, to fold Scotland into a single kingdom, ruled by a single parliament in London. And for years, the Scots had said no. They guarded their own parliament, their own laws, their own name. But now they were on their knees, with a hole in the nation's books the size of the whole country. So England made an offer. Join us, 1 crown, 1 parliament, and we will pay. There was even a name for the money. They called it the equivalent, nearly £400,000 sent north. And a large slice of it went straight into the hands of the men who had lost their fortunes at Darien, paid back with interest. Sit with what that means. The very money Scotland had thrown away in the jungle was handed back to its richest, most powerful men, so long as they cast one vote. A vote to close their own parliament, a vote to end their own country. And they cast it. In 1707, the Scottish Parliament voted itself out of being. Scotland and England became one. The people in the street knew exactly what had been done to them. Years later, the poet Robert Burns put it in words that still cut to the bone. Bought and sold for English gold, such a parcel of rogues in a nation. So here is the lesson, and it is the only one that matters. Scotland was not beaten in battle. It was not crushed under a larger army. It was buried by its own money, by one bet too big that went bad. And when the bill came due, it paid with the one thing it could never earn back, its freedom. History remembers the kings. We follow the money, and the money always tells the truth in the end. If you want to follow the money with us, subscribe, and I'll see you on the other side.